Tvos Spotlight Series with your guest host, Tara Travis.
Hello and welcome to the Tvos Spotlight Series. I'm Amanda Sellers.
And I'm Mike Shurko.
And we're co-creators of the Voiceover School. Since opening our virtual doors in 2019, hundreds of successful working voice actors have emerged. And we're so proud of each and every one of them. We decided these stars deserve a spotlight.
Each week, guest host and graduate herself, Tara Travis, will interview one of these professional working voice actors and get the skinny on their journeys, lessons, tips, tricks, and more. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Voiceover School Spotlight Series.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 3 of the Tvos Spotlight Series. I am so thrilled to share this episode with you. Brent Hirose is one of the hardest working humans in show business, and he really shows you how it's done. He shares so many of his secrets. You don't want to miss this one. Brent Hirose is an actor, writer, director, improviser, and voiceover artist based in Vancouver, BC. A graduate of the University of Winnipeg, Brent has lent his voice to a variety of projects, from commercials, audiobooks, YouTube videos, podcasts, video games, and cartoons. Highlights include the hit video game Escape from Tarkov, a nationwide campaign for Apprenticeship Manitoba, and lead voices on the cartoons Noonbory and Super 7 and Kung Fu Dino Posse. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. All right, listeners, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Please welcome to the mic and screen, the one, the only, the magnificently talented Brent Hirose.
Thank you. It's so amazing, Tara, just to see you turn that on when it's time.
I know.
I got to see a little bit of your process there, and it was absolutely fantastic. So. Listeners, I'm sorry you had to miss out on that, but it was a good moment.
Yeah, I'm just like a ghoul person beforehand, and then it's just like the moment arrives. Brent, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you as well. We are so very close to each other, yet so far.
It is true. For those of you who do not know us or have context in this regard, we are in fact neighbors across the street. We could almost physically reach each other. Not quite.
I'm pointing at, reaching out to you right now. You're somewhere in that direction.
No, wait, I'm turning around. You're that way.
There we go.
I'm in this vacuum. What is direction? But anyway,
I have no idea. This is crazy because I moved kitty corner to you during COVID, and so because of that, we have seen each other maybe like once or twice on the street, but have not been able to.
You passed me on the bike the other day. We had that one brief distant meeting on your balcony. I jumped over the edge. It felt very
strange time to be in your neighbors, but so lovely to live in the hood.
I know. I can feel the proximity. It feels beautiful. But right now we're here to talk about what a freaking rock star you are as a voice actor. I mean, and beyond. I know there are many, many things which you do, and you are excellent at all of them. But today we're focusing on that facet of your career. So let's talk about your journey into voice acting and where you are in your relationship with it today.
That's an excellent question. Where am I with it today? My voice acting career is interesting because I do a lot of various things. We know each other through doing theater. We met doing the Fringe circuit years and years ago, over a decade ago. My goodness.
Yeah, we drove to Winnipeg together once.
We did, yes. We've had adventures together, Tara.
Indeed.
And I think that I've always sort of looked at my career as being like a stool with multiple legs on it. And so my training is in theater. I also have film training, and that's part of the reason why I moved out to Vancouver, is to be in a city that has, more access to film and commercials and all those other things. And and I do improv and comedy. And yeah, voiceover was something that I started doing when I lived in Winnipeg, that I sort of fell into. In Winnipeg, there is only one casting director in town that I had a fairly decent relationship with, and a production company there, DeCapo Productions. They were looking to cast a soccer TV show called Super Strikers, which is incredibly popular around the world. I didn't get the role that I went for there, but that got me on DeCapo's radar, and they called me in specifically for another cartoon that they were doing. So they had a period where they were doing tons and tons and tons of cartoons, all this non-union stuff with Cookie Jar Productions in Toronto. And I booked a lead on a show and then a lead on another show. And because they liked me, they would throw extra characters at me. So it was this big part of my career while I was in Winnipeg. And towards the end of my time there, when I was like, I feel like there's a glass ceiling, and I was still in my 20s, and people in their 30s were playing roles of characters in their 20s. I'm like, I'm waiting for people to die. I need to move to someplace else. So that's when I moved to Vancouver, and had sort of like a rude awakening of moving to a new market and being like, oh, nobody cares about anything that I've done. I'm basically starting from square one here. So yeah, I spent a few years sort of like finding my feet in Vancouver, and I was really wanting to get into voiceover out here, but discovered that like I was just not getting any headway into it. And I think the worst thing about it was, I would talk to people and they would tell me, oh, these are the best agencies for voiceover. And I would email them and I would not hear anything back and be like, okay, cool. So that's sort of where my career is. So I basically took a bunch of time off of, I had a couple of years where I stopped acting for a while, and I was just helping support my partner at the time move over to Vancouver. And in that time, it was really like, oh no, I need to be back in my career. I need to be back being creative and doing acting. Point in my career that was pretty down, and I realized I needed to get back into acting, and I needed to rejoin that part of my career. And so I was getting a lot more proactive about checking out all various forums and Facebook groups and stuff. And I discovered this local production group here in Vancouver called Digital Sound Magic. And they were looking to create their own roster of people, or add people to their roster for doing audiobooks and some cartoon stuff. And so I started booking a ton of work with them, and had a lot of great interactions with their engineers who were like, oh, wow, you really know what you're doing. You've got a lot of experience here. It's like, yeah, I do have a lot of experience. Thank you for noticing.
Yes, you do.
And then I through all entirely my faults, I had a few scheduling snafus with them where they're like, okay, we're going to put you on the back burner for a little bit. And at that point, around that same time, I saw that you were talking about the voiceover school. And I had been looking at voiceover classes here in Vancouver to see like, and it's hard. Number one, like you always have a little bit of an ego about like, do I really need to take intro to voiceover when I've been doing all this stuff before? And a lot of the classes in town are just incredibly expensive. So when I saw you talking about the voiceover school, and I knew you, and I knew that you were speaking so highly of them, and the cost was so it was like, oh, that's like a very reasonable amount of money for the class. So I decided to take it, and I had actually bought into it before this thing happened with Digital Sound Magic. But after it happened, and like the engineer was like, you're really good at this. I'm sure you're gonna have a great career. I was like, yeah, and you know what? I should like really get into that class that I got before. So that was a real opportunity for me to decide, yes, I really want to try this. And it was around the start of COVID too. So I was like, well, I need to do something. So I've got this time. I've already bought the class, and that sort of sent me down that pathway. And for me, I think a big part of it was not using so many things, like so many different parts of my career and things that I'd done, and stuff that's not even directly acting related. Definitely, having acting and improv skill has been helpful for, learning how to read stuff. But I'd also had done a podcast with a friend of mine just for fun. We did over 100 episodes. And so I had experience working with Audacity, and I had experience editing a bunch of audio. Some people have asked me like, oh, how do you get really good at editing audio? It's like, edit 100 hours of your podcast. Like, get really used to hating the sound of your own voice and being able to recognize in a waveform your like ums and ahs and breaths. So all of that sort of fed into things and allowed me to hit the ground running when I decided to give things a go. And so it's been about a year since I've been doing that now. And it has been really, really successful for me. I've seen pretty steady climb in terms of the amount of money I've been making, in terms of the amount of auditions I've been doing, in terms of all that stuff. So it's been really good. It's been really positive. And through the help of Amanda and Mike at the voiceover school, I have a new voiceover agent that I'm really happy with. So
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of auditions there. And so, yeah, I'm the only thing I've ever wanted as an actor is to like have the opportunity to be seen and to be heard for things. And I'm sort of have an abundance of that right now, which I think is a fantastic place to be. It's
Yeah.
you want those at bats, you want those opportunities, and as you're doing them, you're going to improve through doing that as well. And so that's where I've seen things been going. So it's been super positive. I don't know. I feel like I've been rambling.
Amazing.
So
No,
is there anything that I have not been clear enough about?
this is all gold. This is all gold. And I think you are such a wonderful example of how to take what you're armed with, either, all of the experience that you bring from various facets of your life coming in, but also, the tools that they give you in the voiceover school and turning it into a DIY career,
Hmm.
which is yes, and you control how much you audition, you can control the quality of what you produce. You're the owner of it. And then yes, you are also always improving and always leveling up for when those opportunities come uh,
Hmm.
outside of your own efforts, like via your agent and via, other institutions like Digital Sound Magic, etc. So it's just watching you in the group has been so incredible because you are a machine. You are a leader among, people who are finding their way. You're so great about, keeping all your statistics and marking all of that kind of stuff. Have you always been that way in marking steps in your career?
Not always. So a mutual friend of ours, Andrew Wade,
Yes.
who is also a fringe artist, he has a blog that he keeps where after his fringe tours, he will sort of break down all of his costs and like how many people came to see his shows. And I would read those and just be like absolutely blown away by not only the amount of record keeping. It sort of
Hmm.
inspired me to be like, I should keep better records, because sometimes I just sort of like, oh, fly by the seat, but things look okay. Where it's like, no, this is a much better way to do it, to like really be on top of like, yeah, how much are you spending, how much are you taking in, how are things like working out for you, but also like being really candid about it. He would share things for festivals that were not successful, and things that show that like, oh wow, that's a lot of time and energy to not be breaking even. And it's like, I'm not embarrassed for him reading these. I'm like, oh, I
Mm.
really appreciate that information. This is telling me what that experience is. And I think if I'm being honest with myself, there are probably a bunch of things that I've done where, if I broke down that like cost for the time and everything, it may make me reconsider the ways that I'm going about things.
Hmm.
So that really inspired me to be more diligent about my record keeping. And it's been really helpful for me because it's useful on a bunch of different things. So I have like a spreadsheet that I've created to sort of track the general amount of bookings and the amount of work that I've been doing, but also for my individual bookings, when they come in, how much they're for, when I've invoiced them, if they've paid me yet, which unloads a lot of that off of your brain. And especially if you
Hmm.
are trying to get successful and book a lot of work, it's not going to be something that you can always keep track of on your own. Have something there to help keep you accountable so that you can go back to it. And I think it's been useful also in the sort of ups and downs that you'll have. Like I had a really,
Hmm.
really down month, and I got to like look at my stats and be like, oh, okay, no, this month isn't as down as I think it is, or it's down for these reasons. I haven't been auditioning as much, or I've been saying no to auditions that I didn't want to do, and it's like maybe those were auditions that you could have booked. So it's nice to have some data so that it's not just your own feelings, because I think sometimes we can get caught up in our feelings, especially if we get into like a negative spiral about like, oh, everything up until now was a fluke, I'm not actually that good, and you know all those things that I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody goes through. But I think it's especially easy to go through that in a creative field where a big part of what and why you're getting paid is like validation from other people.
Yes.
um, and I think having statistics is a great way to be able to step back from that
Yeah.
and see that the individual day is actually part of a much bigger trend. And I think
Yes.
if you're putting that work in, you will see that the trend will go upwards depending on the amount of energy that you're putting into it. Because
Absolutely.
I've had a few people who've approached me and they've been like, what am I doing wrong? I see that you're booking a lot and I'm not booking a lot. And I look at it, and often the answer is you just need to audition more.
Hmm.
Like, and maybe that's because you don't have the time, or maybe that's because you're getting a little bit down on yourself. It's like, yeah, like the reason why I'm booking so much is I'm auditioning 10 times more than you. If you'd audition 10 times more, I'm sure you would have 10 times more bookings. And that can be hard because it is a lot of work.
It
Um,
is.
but I think there's also like joy to be had in doing the
Yes.
work and doing it well, and getting your processes down, because I think everybody can find a way to do anything faster or better, or
Yes.
yeah. And as you start doing that, as you build that up, I think that also gives you the confidence that you need. And I think the biggest thing that you need is just ways of giving you confidence. And I think having the stats can be really helpful for that, to be like, okay, I'm seeing that change over time, and I'm also judging this on a much longer time scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Um,
that kind of tracking for so many reasons. I mean, for all of the ones that you listed, just having quantifiable evidence that you can look at, not only for giving yourself a pep talk or for looking at trends or for looking at output versus input, all of those things, but also just to, yeah, keep yourself accountable, like setting up that infrastructure off the bat. Maybe it takes a little while to master your spreadsheet, see what layout works best for you. But I think often people are so excited to just get going and they just dive in and just throw a bunch of auditions into the vortex. And it's easy to feel lost or be wondering about where you actually are or where you're falling in relationship to your peers or to last month or the month before. So yeah, a word to the wise, spend time, set up that template for yourself at the outset, and you'll have a much easier time of it. It'll be easier to keep track of things. It kind of takes away a lot of, I don't know, like psychic pain, or
mhm,
maybe I'm
mhm.
being dramatic, but how unlike me. But there's so much of that emotional energy that goes into maintaining those things, especially
Absolutely.
if you're coming from more of an artist mentality, which is certainly uh, how I'm built. I'm not
Well, and
naturally a business person.
I
Um,
think part of it too is that, you know, uh, you can always measure yourself against other people. And I think
yeah,
that is not a great place to succeed.
no,
You need to measure yourself against yourself.
yeah,
And I think because you have control over the amount of work that you're putting in, you have
hmm,
control over how you're doing things. And if you're like, okay, I am like measuring myself against my success, against myself, and I want to be like constantly improving, that also gives you a different time frame. It's like,
hmm,
oh, this is a marathon. I need to pace
yeah,
myself. I need to be sustainable.
hmm,
So I need to like figure out like, how many editions in a day is too much for me? Or have I gotten to the point in the day where it's like forcing myself to push through these extra additions is going to do more harm than good? I'm going to come in tomorrow with less energy.
hmm,
The spoons theory. Have you spent too many
hmm,
spoons on doing that work? Because you need to find out like what is your limits, and then of course work yourself so you get better at it, so you can do more, so you have more endurance. But I think if you push yourself too far, if you let
hmm,
yourself burn out, and I can definitely see
yes,
there's so many things that you can do. You set up your website and get all your demos together and audition for everything every day, and check out these other websites and be on these forums and like there's an infinite amount of things.
Mhm.
And I'm certainly not like complete in terms of the things that I want to do. And there's some steps that I'm like, I kind of skipped over that and I need to go back. This is one big thing for me is I have gone through the lessons from the voiceover school like multiple times. There are some modules that I have listened to like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times. And it's
Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, these are good reminders. It's good to go back to the basics and remind yourself of those things and see like, oh, what am I not doing that I need to reincorporate? And be kind to yourself because
Yes.
you're building that process and it will come and it'll get better. But you do need to like allow yourself to have that feedback too of like, okay, either it's through statistics or it's through something else that I can be like, let's look at what I've done, what's working, what isn't working, and how
Mhm.
can I fix that and make it better.
Yeah. Yeah, building on your own success always, you
Hmm.
know? Yeah. And you're right. It should be entirely about your own journey as an artist, you know. Certainly, looking to the journeys of others if there are things that you can take that are helpful to lift you up and carry you on your journey, but otherwise very much, comparison is the thief of joy or whatever they
Yeah,
say, right?
absolutely.
It's yeah, launching from your own success to your own next success and onward and upward. So, have you had any like really big lessons that you learned? Either something that happened where you learned it the hard way, where you're like, never do that again, or something that was like, ooh, this is significant and awesome, and I will never forget this.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them have come through trial and error,
Hmm.
but certainly sort of discovering like, oh, I think when I initially started doing this work, I was maybe a bit more afraid of clients.
Yeah.
I think it's very common for people to get their first directed session in to be like, oh, this is where it all falls apart. This is where they discover how much of an imposter I am, and I think we're all struggling with that imposter syndrome, and it feels that way, especially when you're recording in your closet,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
just like, what is this? Um, but I think ultimately, you just need to understand that what we're selling is not, $1 million studio, is not a like $10,000 microphone. It's your voice and your performance, and that is what people are paying for, and that is what people are booking. Um, the rest of that stuff that may make you feel like, oh, I'm not quite there yet. As long as you have that performance, as long as you are confident, and if you get a booking, it's because they wanted you.
Yes.
Um, and one thing that I recently shared in the voiceover group is a booking that I had where I got looped into the back end of it. And so I got to see the back and forth, the email chain of people talking about, oh, we want this voiceover actor. And I saw that I was not the first person picked. They had this other guy, and somebody was like, no, we don't really like the deep voice, and maybe go for one of these two people. Oh, we'll go with this guy. And it's just like, okay, cool. So it allows you to see like how many factors are at play that you're not in control of. And like how sometimes it's just a whim where you get it and it's like, okay, cool. uh I think as an actor who has like experience in theater and film and all of those other things, I maybe have a little bit more of that thick skin than maybe
Hmm.
somebody who's just coming into voiceover for the first time. We're used to constant rejection. We're used to the idea that like if you book 1 in every 10 auditions, you're doing amazing. um it's not something where you get a job and then you do that job for the next 10 years, although you may have clients that you end up keeping for that long. But it's definitely about acknowledging that it's a numbers game, and feeling that like, what can I do to stand out, and how can I throw it away once it's done? I think
Yes.
we need to become really good at putting our 100% into the audition, and then as soon as you click send, it is
Yeah.
completely out of your mind.
Yeah,
Um,
absolute detachment. It's
yeah,
like writing a letter, putting it in a bottle and throwing it into the ocean, you know? Maybe I'll hear something back, but I know that what I put in that letter was the absolute best I could do, to the best of my ability. It was my greatest offer. I feel great about it. If it comes back, so be it. But I
Mhm.
think that that detachment is so healthy for dealing with rejection, and all of that kind of thing. I don't even like thinking about it as rejection. I know that's the term that is often used, but it's just, like you said, like what a gift to be looped in on that decision-making process, right? Because
Yeah.
there are so many moving parts. There's so much that's out of our hands. It doesn't mean that we're not incredibly talented and that we don't have an interesting read that serves their product or story. It just means that, the CEO likes more of a rumble or less of a rumble or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
it's uh it's not personal.
Well, and
Uh
to
yeah.
me for that one, like I don't know, as a male who frequently gets auditions for like, we're looking for a Sam Elliott type or
Right, right.
there's things that I'm not. And
Brr.
like when I see those, I just instantly decline them because I'm not going to spend some time trying to do and it's like it's not going to sound good versus somebody who actually has that voice. So like sometimes I long for that voice, but it'd be like, "Oh, that's the reason why I got this, as I didn't have that." Is great. But on the subject of rejection, I think we have to like understand that a lot of that feeling of rejection is coming from ourselves. It's coming
Mhm,
from our own preconceptions of what things are and our
mhm.
own desires. And I mean, auditions are lottery tickets. The reason why you want to do as many as you can is because you want to buy more lottery tickets. Buying
Totally.
one lottery ticket and like spending a lot of time being like, oh, this one better win is not helping your chances of winning the lottery. You need as many as you can, as many at bats, because I truly believe this that like if you have confidence in your abilities, if you're getting your reads down, there are people out there who want your voice. So
Mhm.
you just need to be there and you just need to get it out. And I'm sure every single one of us has missed out on a booking because we just didn't audition for it.
Yep.
So that's really where we want to be, where we can be auditioning for as much as possible. But again, doing it in a way that is sustainable. So we're not, so exhausted by the time we get to the audition that we were going to book that we can't do a good job of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that balance that we need to
It's a
find. And
delicate balance for sure. For sure. But also, like, the more auditions that you do, the faster you get at it, the more you trust your intuition on a first read. Pardon
mhm,
me.
mhm.
I didn't do my vocal warm up today. What was I thinking? Do as I say, not as I do, people. Uh, hey, speaking of which, maybe that was an intended segue. Do you have a warm up that you do or a little pre work ritual that gets you in the zone?
So what I will do in the morning is get up and I try to do all the auditions that have come in overnight. And sometimes I will pick an audition that has like 40 people have already applied to it and be like,
Mm,
this is my warm up audition. So yeah, I'll sometimes do like a little bit of scales or whatnot, but I find that my talking is warmed up by
hmm.
talking, and so
Yes.
I need to do that and. Um, the way that I will do an audition usually is I will just do a cold read. I'm pretty good at cold reads,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty good at sort of like self monitoring. So I might start reading copy and be like, today at Lowe's, we need to. No, today at Lowe's, we need so like finding that in the moment and just hydrating.
Yes.
So I will get up and I'll start drinking water and I'll make myself tea and I'll have some tea and maybe a green apple if I'm feeling that I need. And the green apple for me is so psychological because I know so much of it is technique. But as soon as I have the green apple, I'm like, that
Yeah.
acidic mouth feel is great. All the
Yeah.
saliva is gone. So I'll do that, and then I'll just start doing auditions, and I will frequently do my first auditions just going in and out of the booth because it gives me time to hydrate as I'm editing,
Mm.
and if there's something that I'm hearing in my voice, be like, oh, okay, that's something that I need to warm up today. So yeah, it's more the process of getting into things, hydrating, and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Hydration is key,
Hmm.
and hydrating the day before. So even on weekends, right? Because
Mm.
there's like that science around it that the hydration that you are enjoying in this moment is actually from yesterday. So
Yes. I think the other thing too is that like I know that my voice is a bit deeper in the mornings.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's some things where, especially for work, like there's some jobs that I'll get and I'll be like, oh, you want something a little bit deeper. And so I will record that first thing in the morning. After I've done a couple of auditions, I'll do that. And the deeper baritone timbre
Mhm.
is there that, as my voice brightens up over the day, is not as useful for.
Yeah, you kind of become a master of your vocal pockets, right? Like there are
Hmm.
certain things, especially when you're doing something long arc like an audiobook, it's really choosing that window of the day and keeping it consistent so that you're in the same vocal pocket every day. Same thing, I'll do a lot more, short form, either gigs or auditions off the top of the day to warm up ye old pipes, and then, get into that sustainable, consistent zone so that half your book isn't, she walked down the street.
Oh, I did this one audition, oh, this one gig actually that I had where they wanted, a bunch of like different emotional reads of the same text, and I let it go way too close to the deadline before I'm like, oh, I really need to like get
Mhm,
the work done on this,
mhm.
and it was like 10 minutes of reading this text as angry as possible, and oh man, was that just so taxing on the voice? And like I knew immediately, I was like, oh crap, this is gonna be hard. And had to like reorder some of the things and be like, okay, I've got 2 days. So these are the ones that are hard. I'm gonna put them at the end of both of those
Mhm.
recording days. And like hopefully I'm not gonna completely blow out my voice before I get to the end of it. And I count myself lucky in that, I have all this training so I could use proper vocal technique and I could like find ways of not stressing things while still doing it. But it was definitely something that I'm like, needed all hands on deck in terms of
Mhm.
what skills do I have? How can I schedule this so that I'm taking care of my voice? Because I need to not only do this, but then the next day after that, I need to have a voice. I need to be able to do other projects. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a great, little bit of knowledge for people who are just getting in, right? Because they might get really excited about their amazing dragon voice or
Yeah.
whatever, but and you may book the gig. Is it sustainable? Does it cause damage? Do you have the skills to maintain it in a healthy and safe way? And, yeah, just having that heightened awareness, I mean, you're a pro, you know how to do it, but even still, right, it takes every last bit of your skill set sometimes when you're managing multiple gigs, some of them more challenging than others, regardless of how skilled you are.
And I think part of my learning has been making mistakes. So,
Yep.
those mistakes will happen and
Yep.
you have to be ready to be like, okay, I've made the mistake and now what changes do I need to do so I never make that mistake again?
Exactement ça. And we really
Yeah.
just we learn by doing. We really learn by doing.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I mean, you've been rocking this for a long time, even before your voiceover school education, which I imagine for you was more about how to be like self-sustaining as a voice actor from your own home studio. Is that mostly what you took from that education?
Yes and no. I think part of it was because I had been booking voiceover work, uh, straight to a studio.
Mhm.
I hadn't really thought too much about like what is it about my voice that is being cast. And for me, like some of the first lessons where it's like, what kind of voice do you have? Look at all these tags that people use. This is my quirky next door neighbor. This is my serious informant. Like that was
Mm.
that was something that I was like, oh, that's a lot of work. And I remember the first time I read that being a little bit like, what is this really? Do I need to? And it's like, yes, you do. This is how you establish yourself in the market. And this is how you are aware of like what your tool can do. Because
Mhm.
I think it is like equally important to understand your limitations
Mhm.
so that you can either see like, okay, is it possible for me to push past those limitations and like get there? Or is it this is definitely so far away from what I am that I just know that like spending time and energy on that is not a great use of time. And again, when there's so many auditions, if an
Yeah.
audition comes in for James Earl Jones type, do I want to spend however much time, however much like of my voice working that when there's a bunch of other auditions I could do in way less time that I stand
Mhm.
so much more chance of actually booking.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It's like finding your signature voice pockets,
mhm.
mastering those, and then Yeah, knowing what to go for, and
Well,
then
and understanding what other people are seeing in your
yeah,
voice.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, like what are the qualities that are castable? What are and what's the part of your range that is that is more useful? Um, because like you can go really low, but when it gets like it's like maybe this is a cartoon voice, but it's not. I'm not selling a car with this. That's not really where my voice sits in a place that feels natural. It doesn't feel like
Mhm,
it feels like I'm putting something on. So
mhm.
that there can be uses for that, but just to know that like that is not that's not the moneymaker. That's not the band of the voice that is the most saleable and the most useful for the majority of work that's coming in.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you've skyrocketed to success, like, through your, incredible, dedication and commitment to craft and, bringing your talent to the mic. What are there, like, a handful of gigs that you've scored or one in particular that you go like, "Oh," like, where it just feels like a really big highlight?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few things that I got for some VR games that were like big, long-standing contracts.
Yeah.
And I think part of it for me is like I've never been afraid of putting in like a lot of work. And I
Mhm.
think some of my early gigs, my first gig that I got was for a YouTube channel,
Hmm.
and it was recording, 10-minute videos and recording like a bunch of those every week. And so ultimately, the amount of money that I was making was not a lot, but it was such good practice. It was like amazing, amazing practice. And I look at other gigs that I have now where, I'm doing e-learning or narrating a textbook, and yeah, I've sort of learned, the ways of being comfortable in the booth that long, the ways of being
Mhm.
able to like produce X amount of audio. And I always encourage people that when they're starting out to like, under promise so you can over deliver. And then
Mhm.
as you get better and better at it, then you can like still under promise, but under promise more and more and more and more and more. So that, if somebody does come to you and they've got, I need this big project, it's a lot of words, it's got a short turnaround time. Can you do it? To be like confident and being like, yes, yes, I can do it. It's going to cost you a little bit more because
Mhm.
that's a rush gig, whatever. And then,
Yep.
um, so yeah, I think it's been all of those things where it's like the seeds of the work that I've put in before are really paying off and bearing fruit. And like
Mhm.
I remember early on when things were starting to blow up for me, Amanda from the voiceover school being like, okay, so you've been successful. Have you had a month where you've cleared this much, where you've done $10,000? And at the time I was like, no, not even close. That seems impossible. And I just passed that threshold. And I hesitate to talk about like the money side of it because it feels braggy sometimes. But I think it's important to know that it is possible.
Mhm.
And it didn't feel like it wasn't booking one huge gig. It was booking a bunch of things and having a bunch of clients that were giving me like tons and tons of work. So like for that 30-day period where I made that much money, I was working my butt off.
Mhm.
Um, but I was enjoying the work that I was doing, and it was really a lot of those yeah, those seeds that were planted earlier coming back to pay off. So I think you shouldn't have expectations of where things are going to go. You never know. But I think that's you're always aiming to be establishing good relationships with clients, to
Mhm.
be putting in that work and getting yourself to the place that if somebody was like, yeah, I need you to be doing this amount of work, can you do it, so that you can say yes to those things and say yes to
Yes.
those opportunities.
Yeah, confidence building. That's amazing.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for sharing that because I know sometimes, especially among peers, we can feel uncomfortable talking about money. But I think just as we were both incredibly grateful to our friend Andrew Wade for sharing his statistics with his theater touring, so too can we stand on each other's shoulders or learn from each other if we're transparent about these things, within our lovely supportive community group. I think it's just letting people know what is possible and you can dream beyond, you can dream giant. It's but just also having a practical awareness of the level of output that it takes and kind of keep on trucking. there are
Yeah,
those there are those slow pockets, it happens, right?
part of this to me is like I really appreciate how Mike and Amanda are pushing forward with an idea that like there shouldn't be a scarcity mentality. There's tons of
No,
work out there,
so much.
and and I think part of that for me is like, people have asked me for advice, and I am happy to tell people everything that I do. Um, because even if somebody has the exact same voice as me, we're going to have different approaches on things. And if somebody's coming up, like I invite you to outwork me. I invite you to put in more time and put in more effort, and because it's a lot of work. It is
Mhm.
tons and tons of work, and I don't think anybody is telling you that it's not. Um, and I think the big thing that you need to be doing as you're going through this is constantly be checking in with yourself and seeing like, am I finding joy in the work that I'm doing right now? Is this something that I enjoy doing? And if you're not, then maybe that's something about the way you're doing it. Maybe that's something about the work itself. But
Mhm.
I think when you are finding work in it, that's what allows you to get to that point where, yeah, I am putting in all this work and I am, able to find that success because it's not work in the same way that, I don't know, going into an office would be.
Mhm.
Um, but it does involve, it's not just talking into a microphone. It's
No,
not the simplest version of the thing.
no, it's
And
not.
I think also once you sort of acknowledge that, it allows you to feel more value in the work that you're doing, that
Yes, yes.
the clients that you're getting, they're not paying for you know the 2 minutes you're spending recording a spot, but they're spending for all the work that you've put in, for all the money
Mhm.
you've invested in yourself, in your studio,
Mhm.
in just time, so
Mhm.
much time.
Yeah.
um you're getting paid for all the auditions that you didn't get,
Yes.
for the ones that you do. So
Yeah.
don't undervalue yourself, and feel good about the work that you've put in.
Know your worth,
Yeah.
people. Know it. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. You are a leader and a champion, and I'm so glad to know you. What's your next big dream? What's on your VO horizon?
Well, I mean, I would definitely love to get back into doing more animation stuff. So I've done a little bit with digital sound magic, and I have a fantastic agent here at Connect Creative, Melanie Eng. She's a relatively new
Yes.
agent in the city, but she's gotten me so many auditions that I just didn't have access to before,
Awesome.
and has been very she's been a cheerleader. And I think
Mhm.
you always want to be working with people who are excited about your work, and I feel so blessed to have her on my side. So we've been doing a bunch of auditions, so I'm just like, it's like anything else, you just got to put in the
Yeah.
work, and eventually one of those is going to come in. So that's what I'm hoping will be happening in the near future.
Lottery
um,
tickets.
I know there's a lot of the work that used to be here in Vancouver has moved down to like Georgia, but like as
Mhm.
a teenage anime fan, I would love to voice a character on an anime. I think that would be super fun. Um, and yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm excited to. I'm excited to find out what my new balance is with voiceover as the world starts opening up again, because
Mhm.
I'm excited to be doing more live performance, finding that, and I wonder what life can be when I'm have all my legs back on my stool and see what kind of weight it can support. So I think that's the other thing that I'm sort of being aware of is like, okay, like what are the ways to make this sustainable with all the other stuff I want to be doing? I don't want, the world to open up again and me to let this lie fallow, because it's been so good to me, and I think it can continue to be as long as I am tending to it properly.
Absolutely, and you do. That's a question I have too, it's true, it's been such a wonderful time of incubation and focus, and it's been such a great time to really, like, level up specifically, but yeah, once you start, incorporating all those other parts of your life, um, I'm sure you'll figure it out, you're smart. Your spreadsheet'll just get a little bit longer, a
It'll
little
get
bit
huge.
deeper,
It'll get huge.
a
Yeah.
little more color coded, perhaps. Maybe we can jam on that because we're both actively putting legs back on stools.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'd love to talk about how that all goes. Well,
That'll be
Brent,
our follow-up podcast.
that'll be our
Absolutely.
follow-up. Yeah, yeah. If we could do a follow-up, like once the world is open again and we're both also on tour and like, you know, under duvets trying to, keep our clients, we'll see. We'll like master the road rig.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh
mastery
man,
of the road rig.
the
Maybe
road
that's.
rig stories. There's something there. There's
Oh yeah,
something
there's
there. Yeah.
something there. Okay, okay. We'll we'll pick this up another time. So, Brent, I mean, I could talk to you all day. You are a wealth of knowledge, but I'm also incredibly mindful of your time. So I think maybe we'll wrap it there. But the people are going to want to follow you and see you. Where can they find you and hear your brilliant voice?
Well, you can find me at Brent Hirose on Twitter, at Brent_Hirose on Instagram, or BrentHirose.com. I am, as far as Google is concerned, the only Brent Hirose in the world. So my SEO is impeccable.
Oh, you are so lucky. That is awesome. Brent Hirose, just find him. Just Google him. He's the
I
one.
am the Brent Hirose.
The one. The Brent Hirose. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. Any final words, any like a final nugget of wisdom you would leave with any VO hopefuls who are just entering the world?
I think that number one, if you're not part of the voiceover school, I highly recommend joining it. I have been such a booster for the school since I joined it, and sometimes I feel like a shill, but I'm not being paid to do this. I'm doing it out of a genuine appreciation for what the school has done for me and for the community that's built around it. I always encourage people who are looking to get into voiceover to like join the Facebook group. There's a lot of discussion that is about stuff in the school, so maybe it won't be so pertinent to you, but people are always talking about stuff there, and having that community, especially during COVID, was so useful to me and has given so much. And I think all the people in there, myself, and I don't know, I feel like I can speak for you, Tara, and
Yeah,
included. We're happy to take questions. We're happy to share the knowledge that we have.
totally.
Again, that is outside of that idea of scarcity. We want this knowledge to be out there,
Hmm.
because I'm also interested in other people. Like, what have you learned? Share your knowledge with me. I'm always down to hear like what's working for you,
Yeah,
because there's no right answer. And I don't know.
yeah,
I feel like everybody, once you hear a bunch of different ways of doing things, you'll see like, oh, that works for me, and that works for me, and that works for
yeah,
me. And we're all given so much more when we
yeah,
build up our tool set.
yeah.
So come in, take some of our tools, and if you have any of your own, leave them behind. We'll be building stuff better together.
Absolutely. We're all training for our own marathon and we are training buddies, sharing
Mhm.
tips and tricks. We are lifting each other up. We all want everyone to exceed, and there is enough room for everyone to exceed, to
Absolutely, yeah.
succeed and excel like yourself. Uh, Thank you. You are a treasure. Yeah, let's pick this up again another time.
I really appreciate you taking the time, Tara. It was great.
Oh, I appreciate you so much. Yeah, we have to do more of this. There is so much more to say. All
There
right.
is.
Yeah, there is indeed. But until then, thank you, wonderful listeners, for spending this time with us. I'm sure you gathered just a quadrillion nuggets of wisdom from our brilliant guest, Brent Hirose. Thank you again for your time. Until next time, everyone, have fun out there. Bye. TVOS Spotlight Series. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. I hope you took away as much as I did from that delicious conversation. The TVOS Spotlight Series jingle was composed by the incredible Charla Victor. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, get on it. See you next time.